Welcome to the Grow Strong Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Meredith Bell, and I interview business leaders who are committed to their own growth and the development of everyone on their team. If you enjoy my podcast, be sure to subscribe and rate it on your favorite podcast platform. Welcome back to the Grow Strong Leaders podcast. I'm very excited to welcome back as my guest today, Rich Habets. Rich, welcome to my show.
Hey, Meredith, good to see you again. Thank you for having me
No,
again.
I love having you back. I want to tell my audience about you. Rick was on my show for episode 227, which is almost 2 years ago. It's hard to believe that.
Yeah.
And since then, Rich has become a close friend and trusted colleague. And I'm excited to talk with him today about his new book, Being Your Own Authority. And one of the things that I love about Rich and this book is he really brings to life his experiences and shares really specific ideas that you could start using immediately. And let me tell you a little bit about his background. He's a former executive turned coach and strategist who has spent over 25 years working with leaders, founders, and organizations worldwide. Rich has helped thousands of individuals and businesses break free from limiting patterns and create powerful transformations. He specializes in leadership, mindset shifts, and game changing strategies that help people solve intractable problems by being fully themselves and dismantling the stories that have held them back. I love that about you, Rich, because we have experienced that in our own conversations. And I love what you have packed into this book based on your own experiences. So I want to start out asking you, what's the reason you decided to write this book? What message was it that you wanted to communicate with a wider audience than just your clients?
Wow, that's a good question. Well, I think I had no choice but to communicate this because, ever since I was young, it was always about people being able to be more than what they sometimes show the world, right? It's in the book when I was about 17, I had my first encounter with a so-called self-help book. And when I read that, I was like, wow, see, it is true. There is more possible for human beings than what I see around me, right? Because up to that time, if you experience things, as a kid, you experience sometimes, in my case, shame or guilt, and then you become a little bit smaller and you become a little less self-expressed. And when I read that book, I was like, so it is possible. And I became fascinated by finding out what is this thing that we all call our potential, right? Because we all talk about potential. Oh, you have so much potential, and we should unlock our potential. All these slogans that we have in self-development and psychology and all these other areas. And what really intrigued me, what is that? Because it's such a word. It's just a word, right? Potential. How do you, what is that thing called potential, and how do you get there? And my whole life, I'm now 51. I was yesterday at my birthday. My whole life up to from the point when I was 17 was all about how can I do that for myself? What is this thing called potential? How can I use it? What does it look like when I live in that potential? And how can I help others? And in my case, specifically, people in business use that more, so that not only will they make more money, because money is great, but in my case, it's very important that businesses are authentic, self-expressed, creative, innovative, especially in these times when we have so many products that all look the same, leaders that all talk the same. I mean, if you go to LinkedIn, everybody's got the same profile. If you're a leader listening to this, go to your LinkedIn profile and just compare it to all these other executives and VPs and senior directors, and you all write the same things, right? Everybody's an experienced people leader. They're all accomplished. They all have excellent listening skills. We need to step more into our own authenticity, because that's what it's all about, being your own authority, that you step into your own authenticity, be fully self-expressed with nothing held back. And then you don't have these people that all look, talk, and act the same. and not all these products that look the same. And because we're transitioning in the planet, we need to innovate. And I know innovate is a word that has a lot of meaning to people, right? It means a lot of things to a lot of different people. But innovation for me is just for basically doing something that's never been done before, combining things that have never been done before, solving problems from a new perspective. And that's why I wrote the book, because it is possible. It's absolutely possible. It's not easy. It's not simple. No, it is simple, but it's not easy, right? Because it requires a continuous renewing, renewing until the new software overwrites the old software. And that's why I wrote the book. And yeah, so I had no choice. It was just, I don't like the word calling, but if there ever was a calling, then I had no choice but to write this book. It just needed to be written through me, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Well, it does, because I think when, in your case, with this cumulative experience you had in working with organizations and seeing some of these common threads that you would encounter again and again with the old stories people have, the scripts that are running them, that you've learned so much over the years in helping them and how to help them uncover, that it made sense to me that you would put these in a form that would be immediately useful. And that's what I love about your book. It's very practical in the strategies that you map out and lots of details. Before we go into the to that, I want to talk about a quote, one of the sentences you have in your book that just jumped out at me. You say, I can listen and be present with another person or even a whole company and understand how they hinder themselves through the hidden scripts operating in the background. And I alluded to this in your introduction. I didn't call it scripts, I referred to it as stories. But I love that word scripts. And I would love for you to talk about, from your perspective in writing this book and what you've seen, what is a script and why do we need to rewrite them?
Well, we don't need to rewrite them, right? A lot of people do very well with their scripts. A script, I specifically needed a word here that emphasizes what happens, because a script is like a computer script, right? A script has a start and an end, right? And it gets triggered, like you have it on your desktop, you double click the button, and then the script executes what's in the script, right? Open this, close that, right? Send this email. That's a script. And it's basically a program. It's step one, step two, step three, step four, step five, step six, and it's on full automatic. You don't need to think about it. It's just on full automatic. So a computer just executes a script and then it jumps out of the script and then it goes back to being available for you, right? The way computers have scripts, we humans have scripts too. We have learned ways of acting based on certain triggers that we did as a kid, right? In times of fear or times of shame or guilt, or in times of intense in an emotional period. And we created scripts on how to deal with those situations in the past because they were so threatening to us that we don't ever want to experience them ever again. So we make up a script. And I'll give you an example, which is also in the book. And then what we do, we keep the more we run those scripts, the more they go into the background. Right? Just as a computer, like the computer that we are behind now, they're running, I don't even know, maybe thousands, millions of scripts, right? To have us be here, that we can hear each other, see each other, that it can be recorded, that we have a desktop in front of us. There are all these scripts, and then we humans do that too, right? And the problem with a script is not that it's bad, it's just that it's unconscious and it's on automatic and it's immediate. I call it automatic immediate scripts. They start automatic trigger response, trigger response, trigger response, just like my dog, right? When I say cookie, he comes into the kitchen. He doesn't think like cookie. I had a cookie 2 hours ago. Maybe he's kidding, you know? He doesn't think that. It's trigger response. And a script is the same. Trigger response without us even noticing. There's no thinking involved. And it's immediate because it runs constantly in the background. I'll give you an example, right? One that I use a lot. When I was 6, 7 years old, I was playing with my niece in the kitchen with my cousin with Nancy, and we're having a lot of fun, right? And I'm loud and I'm making jokes and she's laughing and I'm happy that she's laughing because turns out I like making people happy. And she's just having a great time and I'm having a great time. And it's just really at this high level energy that we have, right? You, we know that as kids, right? You're fully in the moment. And then my mom walks in and she looks at us and she says, "Oh, Rich, are you in love with your cousin?" And at that moment, I just like, I felt so much shame. Like, what did I do? Because I felt that I was doing something to, like manipulate her, right? Or do something like being too much for her. And I decided in that moment, oh, I'm too much, right? And I need to be careful. I need to be careful not to be too much. Why did I make up that I need to be careful? Because I didn't want to be too much. Because being too much comes with shame and guilt, right? I felt a lot of shame in that moment. And then I decided, okay, I never want to feel that again. So I'm going to be careful. In the future, I'm not going to be loud and expressive and just fully giving myself anymore. So from that moment on, and by the way, this all happens in the background. It's not like I'm standing there like, wait a minute, this script and then I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. It's basically a survival mechanism where the brain takes over from the heart,
Mm.
right? So the little kid experiences a lot of shame. And, if I would have been like 28 with a full grown brain, I could have said to my mom, "Mom, what are you doing? I'm 6 years old." You can't say that to a kid of 6 years old. But kids don't do that. Kids don't make their parents wrong, they make themselves wrong, right?
Mm.
It was not that my mom said something weird. I thought I was weird. So I decided in that moment, I never want to experience that shame again. So I'm going to be careful. So what happened after that at birthday parties or at social events or even in a one-on-one situation, I would be constantly scanning, am I too much? Because I need to be careful. So later on in life, even in high school, I was careful with women. I was careful not to be rejected because I never wanted to experience that shame ever again, right? Now, I didn't know that was happening. That was in the background. That's what I mean with automatic, immediate. Right? The moment there was a potential rejection coming out my way, or something, a weird, awkward social situation, I would be up, I would be gone. Right? One of the consequences is that I would reject people before they could reject me. That was my way of being careful. Right? If I was in a relationship and I felt my girlfriend wanted to break up, I was already breaking up with her because, hey, I need to be careful not to be put to shame again. So that became a script, something in the background. And the nasty thing with scripts is that they come with a cost, they come with an impact. And as long as we don't see the impact, we don't really have a choice. We just run the script, right? So potentially awkward situation. Oh, I'm going to be careful. I'm not going to speak up. Even at work, right? A colleague says something that I don't agree with in a meeting. Let me be careful. Let not speak up because what if I say something stupid, right? But at a certain age, I started finding out that, wait a minute, what I'm doing is I'm being careful not to be rejected. So I didn't speak with a lot of women in my high school because hey, that was dangerous, right? To be rejected. I didn't speak up in class, even if I didn't agree. I would just nod along, right? And that cost me my peace of mind because I had opinions, but I just didn't tell them to people. And then later on, I would get cynical or I would get sarcastic or would start gossiping about the people in the class that would speak up, like, have you seen that guy? Always blah, 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 blah. Right? But it was just my script that wasn't automatic and it was always immediately scanning the environment for the risk of potentially being put to shame. And that's what a script does. So it's not bad, it's not evil, there's nothing wrong with it. But as long as it runs in the background and it's not distinguished, it just runs your life. And we don't have one script, we don't have two, we have a lot of them, right? And the more we see, and even I think it was Plato who said the unexamined life is not worth living. I think what he mentioned, what he was pointing to, is that if you don't see what's running you, you cannot change it. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so the question that kind of bubbles up is, how can we become more aware of these scripts that aren't serving us? Because you said earlier,
Yeah.
rightly, that there are scripts that work well, but the ones that aren't serving us well, this example you just gave is very powerful because it shows how it impacted so many aspects of how you showed up and how you interpreted and viewed situations. And so, thinking about what you do to help individuals and organizations as a whole become more aware of these and recognizing that you're not coaching the person who's listening to this conversation directly, what could you suggest to help people become or pay attention to how they're responding and identify what scripts aren't serving them?
Yeah, so there are a lot of them in the book, right, that I'm describing, like the script of pleasing others is a big one, or the script of always needing to be right, right? So those are scripts that run in the background. And once you distinguish them, you get to have a choice. But the biggest indicator of knowing where you run a script is where you are complaining about something, but nothing is shifting, right? You have a complaint about your wife, the boss, work, president, whatever, right? So anything you have a complaint about and there's nothing changing, there is a script in the background running that you're not owning. And that is a strong indicator, right? So what helps for me whenever I'm stuck with a situation that I'm not making any progress on, where I have a complaint, I always write down, how do I see, let's say a colleague, right? There's a colleague and oh, this colleague is stubborn, he never listens and he only does what he wants, right? I write down those judgments. And then I start to see, because the moment I write down the judgments and I get really honest, this is also in the book, it's called radical honesty, right? When I get really honest about what are all my ugly judgments about this person, and I start writing them down, a picture, becomes clear. Something emerges like, I'm judging the hell out of this person because this person is speaking up, and I'm suppressing my speaking up because I'm running that whole I need to be careful script. Oh, wow. So I'm basically judging him for what I'm not doing for me, right? And that's where, well, first of all, a good coach will tell you that, right? They hear that in your speaking and they distinguish that and they make you point to it quicker. But if you want to do it yourself, just really look at a situation. Where are you stuck? Write down the judgments you have about the situation, the person, or even yourself, and then really see if something emerges. Like, who is the person who's having these complaints? Who is he being or she being, right? And I always had complaints. Funny enough, I started working. I always had complaints about older, older guys, like in leadership positions. I would always be very sarcastic, like, "Oh, they think they know everything," and always the big mouth, and they always, you know. But it was just me not owning up to my own voice. And when I ever saw somebody do that, I would judge them, and that's a clear indication of a script in the background.
Really powerful. I want to invite my listeners to think about a situation where you might be having a complaint and take the time to do the kind of writing out about judgments that Rich just recommended. It's really a powerful exercise in getting to the heart of what is it about me that's creating these judgments. One of the other things I love in your book are the distinctions that you make between two ways of being. And I want to go into some of those, but first I want you to explain, what do you mean by the term distinction?
Yeah, it's a good question because there's many, many definitions, of course. Well, I use the one that Werner Erhard, how Werner Erhard and Landmark uses them, right? So Werner Erhard has this great program, I think it's on YouTube, where he talks about visiting a Maasai, the Maasai tribe in Kenya, right? You know, these Maasai tribesmen with the red robes, and they just, and he says, when somebody, a Westerner, would go to them and together with a Maasai tribesman would look at their cattle, the cows, the Westerner would be able to distinguish four shades of brown, right? He would look at the cows and go, oh, that's yeah, one little lighter brown, the darker brown is in the middle, and something really. almost black. The Maasai at the same time would see, looking at the same cows, would see 12 shades of brown,
Mm.
looking at the same thing. So he's able to distinguish much deeper and at a much more profound level than the untrained eye, right? Not only that, the Maasai guy would also be able to not only look at the colors, but also see which cow is hungry, which cow might be getting sick, which cow is sick, which cow is pregnant, which cow might get aggressive. So he would be much more effective being the guy who, how do you call it, a herder?
Herd,
Some,
the herd.
yeah, yeah. So he'd be much more effective with that group of cows, right? Because the Westerner would go like, yeah, well, he's thirsty because he's lying on the ground. But the Messiah would see that 4 hours before that, making him much more effective in dealing with the cows. That is what it means to distinguish. It's like opening your eyes to what's really there.
Mm.
Right? It's like when I don't feel well and I go to the neighbor and I say, I don't feel well, what do you see? And they say, oh, you look a bit pale. But when I go to my doctor and I say, I don't feel well, my doctor looks at my pupils, looks at my skin color, looks at, many more things. And they were able to distinguish much more. And that's what I try to do with these distinctions, right? There's creative reactive, there's owner victim, there's all these distinctions that if you um, use them to look at reality with, you just see more. Can I give you an example?
Please.
Right. So in my corporate programs, there are a couple of distinctions that I bring to them. Right. For instance, in a meeting. So I walk into a meeting and I see people talk, and all these other people in the meeting who don't distinguish what I distinguish, they're in the same meeting, so they're talking about the same stuff. I can tell you with 100% certainty if they're going to execute on the actions, if people understand the actions, if people are aligned behind the actions. I can tell you who's not going to do it. I can tell you exactly who's committed and who's not. And I just see so much more of what's happening in that meeting room. Where the untrained eye, they just have a conversation, these meetings where people just talk over each other and my idea, you get all these ideas stacked on top of ideas, but there's no alignment. They think they have a plan and then they walk out and a month later they get together again and they wonder why is nobody taking their accountability, right? Why is nobody executing? Well, because you had zero alignment. There was nobody listening. The idea wasn't even clear to the half of the room and you didn't pick that up. That's why. Right? And that's what distinguishing means. And with these distinctions in the book, I want to give people these new pair of glasses to look at themselves with, to look at their leadership with, because they're divided into distinctions for yourself, distinctions for how you lead, and distinctions in business. So that's the way I see a distinction. It's just a new pair of glasses, and then you see all of a sudden, looking at the same thing, you see new things. So you're much more effective also.
Great, great definition and explanation, and thanks for the example. So let's start with one that I really enjoyed, and I had never read this before, and that's the one getting from
Mhm.
versus bringing to.
Yeah.
So talk about what each of those means and what the distinction is that you're making there.
Yeah, this might be the biggest one, actually, right? I mentioned it very early in the book.
Mhm.
I've been doubting if I should put it later on in the book, but I use it to illustrate to people or to give them an example how they can read the book, right? But you can use it in all of life. So in the book, I use it as in this way. I say, look, you can read this book coming from a place of, I want to get something from this book, or you can read it from this space of, I want to bring something to the book and read it from that place, right? If you read the book and want to get something from it, from that internal position, you might, you want to go and read the book and you hope for one or two gems or maybe some insight or a really good idea or some quote that you love. And then you go, oh, wait, maybe I get a good idea, right? And then you might get something from the book, right? Um, but I guarantee that if you go read the book coming from an internal space of bringing to, you're going to get much more, but it's much more subtle. When you decide to bring your full attention to the book, when you decide to bring your full life to the book, your reflections, your contemplations, you bring all of that to the book, your full attention, you give yourself fully to the book. You're not going to read the book for one or two insights. You're going to read the book and go for, wait a minute, how does this apply to me? Rich is getting in this fight with this French guy, right? How does this apply to me? Where have I been cocky? Where have I thought that the other person was making the mistake and I was the right one? Where was I righteous and stubborn? If you bring that to the book, then the book is not about Rich or so, or anybody else. It's you getting something from the book by bringing something to the book. Does that make sense? Right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, and it goes everywhere. Like I see all the time people going to work and what are you doing at work? Well, I'm trying to get some satisfaction from work, right? Well, yeah. Well, that works as long as you have nice people to work with, right? But let's say one day you go to work and the boss gives you a project that you like, and you get to work with people that you love, and everybody praises you and people listen well to you. You're like, oh, my job satisfies me. Okay, but what on those days when you get the project you really don't want to do? You get to work with people who you don't like, or you go in a meeting and nobody's listening to you. In that moment, you say, "My job doesn't satisfy me anymore." Right? That's when you come from getting from. I want to get something from my job. Your job cannot give you anything. How does a job do that? Right? The only thing that you want to see is that I have an image in my mind, a mental image, what a satisfying job would look like. The moment it looks like that, I'm satisfied. The moment it doesn't look like that, I'm not satisfied. But I'm the one who's doing that, right? That's the getting from. What if you decide to bring satisfaction to the job? No matter what my colleagues do, no matter which projects I get, no matter if people listen or not, I'm already satisfied. I'm not giving other people the responsibility to satisfy me, right? And then I might go into work and then I get a project that I don't like. Well, you know what? My satisfaction does depend on the project. So maybe I can look at how can I make this project more fun? How can I make it more exciting? How can I give it a much like a better scope? Or how can I involve more people so that the project becomes a fun project, right? So now I'm not trying to get something from my work. I'm bringing satisfaction. Or love relationships. I mean, I'm in deep trouble when I think that my wife needs to give me the feeling that I'm loved. Because sometimes she's just caught up in her thing, and what should I do? Start doubting the relationship because I'm not getting love from her? I mean, we all know that works for like 3 months in the beginning. That's all great and fantastic when it's new, right? But when I start thinking about, oh wait, my wife doesn't. Okay, so I'm gone for 3 days, right, for work, and then I come home and there's no red carpet. She's not in front of the door hugging me with flowers, and the kids are not in their best clothes. Daddy, you're home. They're the moment I don't have that, oh, then I start doubting my relationship, right? That's when I want to get something from a relationship, I always scan it for what does it, correspond with the picture that I have. What would be different if I decide to bring love to my relationship and my wife does the same? When I choose, that's an important distinction, you choose it, right? It's not something that you have to do. You choose to bring love to a relationship. I'm going to give my attention to her. I'm going to bring my listening to her. I'm going to bring my care to her. And if she does the same, I guarantee you have the best relationship ever. And that's the bring to versus get from. And it's everywhere, right? If I'm trying to get happiness from my kids, that works when they're nice and cuddly and friendly. But what if they're running around throwing sand in each other's hair, right? I mean, that goes like that. That goes up and down. But when I decide to already be happy with my kids without them having to be a certain way, my life gets so much easier. I'm a much better dad. They get a much better dad. And my life is just so much easier.
Yeah, I love all those examples that you gave, and the word that's coming to my mind is expectations. When we're
Yeah,
expecting to get something from a situation or someone else, we're likely to be disappointed a lot of the times because everything's not going to go the way we expected it to.
yeah,
But if we
that's
take the
exactly.
personal responsibility, as you were mentioning, to create our own
Yeah,
place to come from,
Yeah.
in terms of what we can bring to the situation, it makes a huge difference. I just think that is a very powerful distinction and worth thinking about in so many situations. I'm glad you gave examples,
Mm,
related to work and family because they're everywhere.
they're
And
everywhere.
we have
Yeah.
these choices. The One of the things that you talked about, making the shift from running on our automatic scripts versus what you call consistent conscious creation. I loved the two stories that you shared there around that. One was at the airlines upgrading to first class, and the other one was more recently with the hotel experience you had. Would you share both of those? Because I think, again, hearing for people to hear your experience and how you approach that, it gives them something tangible and concrete to relate to rather than a concept.
Yeah, yeah, I always love to share stories because I don't think we need more theory. We need more stories that speak to the heart, right? And then we can see something for ourselves. So that's why I share all these examples. By the way, the whole book, the whole concept of being your own authority, people sometimes hear the word authority as something like the military or the government or the police or the boss or the judge, right? That's an authority. In the first page of the book, the real meaning of the word authority comes from a Latin word which means to write your own story, to govern your own
Mm,
story, to grow yourself, right? The word author comes from from the same root word in Latin, right? Author means to write something into existence. So being your own authority means that you have the full capacity to write your own story by becoming aware of the narratives that have been running in the background first. Those are the scripts, right? You have to become aware because you cannot paint on a canvas that's already painted, right? So you need to get to that blank canvas first by dismantling the scripts, seeing them in action, and then you can start creating something new. And that's the game that we talk about, right? Now, is there any particular order that you want me to share this two
no,
stories?
either one, either one.
Okay.
The
Yeah, so we spoke about Steve Hardison before when we were doing the short talk before we recorded this. I actually, when I was coaching with him after 3 years ago, I think it was, I flew back from LA to Frankfurt, and this was in COVID period, and I was a bit nervous because I had forgotten to take the COVID test that was required to get on the plane. I just totally forgot. So I decided to ask for an upgrade during my check-in, and I'm like, hopefully they're not going to ask me for the test because I don't have it. I don't have the result. Now, I go to the check-in desk and I had a business class ticket and I handed over to the lady and I said, oh, by the way, I chose to practice consistent, constant creation, right? And consistent, conscious creation is the exact opposite of consistent, unconscious creation, which is basically what scripts are, right? So I said, okay, no matter what she says, I'm going to try to get an upgrade to first class. So I go to the lady, Lufthansa in this case, I give her a ticket and I say something like, good afternoon. Would you be able to upgrade my flight ticket, please? Would that be possible? And immediately, she didn't even look at anything. She said, oh, it's fully booked. First class is fully booked. In the back of my mind, my old judgmental mind would go like, she didn't even look at the computer. How does she know? Right? That would have taken me out of the game immediately because then I would have had a reaction to her. She would have noticed my irritation and that would have been that. Right? My chances to upgrade would be zero. But I chose consistent consecration. So I said, look, I get that. If somebody cancels or doesn't show up, uh, would you be able to give me the upgrade to the first class? And then she took this card, right? And she said, well, sir, I see that you have the cheapest business class ticket. That would be 1,700 euros extra. Old Richard would have been like, 1,700? Are you crazy? I already paid 2,500 for this and 1,700 for an upgrade? I didn't. And I said, okay, I get that there's a fee involved for the upgrade. if I'm not willing to pay that, would I still be able to get an upgrade? See, I'm still in the conversation. I'm not judging anybody. I'm not making her wrong. I'm just, you know. And she goes into a computer, she starts typing, and then she says, 1 second, and she walks away and she goes, somewhere back there was another lady standing. And she goes to that lady with the card, with the upgrade prices. She's showing it, pointing at me, they're talking. And then the two of them come back to the computer. And the other lady, I think she was a supervisor, starts typing in the computer. And I'm standing there like, oh, this is good, this. And then she says, Mr. Habets, thank you for being a loyal Lufthansa customer. And I thought that's weird because it's the third time ever I've flown Lufthansa. I'm not a loyal. I don't have any membership programs with them. And she says, we're delighted to offer you an upgrade to first class, complimentary upgrade to first class. And I said, okay, thank you very much. And that was that. I got my ticket and I flew back first class. Now, there
No
were
additional charge, right?
no charge, nothing. Yeah, yeah. And all of a sudden, it wasn't fully booked, right? She could just give me an upgrade. And they were even, I think, switching around chairs. Like if we go 7F to 4H, and then, you know, and I even got a really good seat. I had my own private concierge and everything. It was beautiful. I just slept. It was amazing. But the point is really, there were a couple of occasions where I could have reacted. Like, are you crazy? You didn't even check the computer, right? How do you know it's fully booked? Or 1,700 euro? I could have done that. But by really seeing the scripts that are running in the background and not turning the volume up on them, you have a choice into no, you know what I'm here for is to have my ticket upgraded, not to be reactive. So I stayed in consistent conscious creation and I got my upgrade. That's for me is very transformative because normally I would have reacted in that situation.
It's practicing that
Yeah,
um,
always.
in
Always.
in the way that you approach the situation. I just love that story because we can all apply that. There are so many times we can catch ourselves wanting to react and make the other person wrong, make ourselves right instead of what can I create in this moment?
Yeah,
What would I
exactly.
like to create? And that's
Exactly.
just a fantastic story. And your one with the hotel is amazingly powerful. And I would love to have you share that one as well. That's a much more recent thing that's
Yeah,
happened.
it's about 2 months ago. Well, just to finish off the other one also, in order to know what you're up to, you have to be really aware of the scripts in the background, right? Because if you're not aware of them, how can you um, when you're not aware of them, they're a blind spot, and they still steer the car, right? They still run your life. That's why you really have to see at what are the things that I'm reacting to, what have I been reacting to, what are these scripts. And it's not like you're deleting them or throwing them out or making them wrong. Just see what are the learned habitual patterns of reacting that I've done in the past that are no longer helping me. That is really the key because I see a lot of people, they jump into, oh, let's create. Well, maybe that works for like 10 minutes, but then you're thrown into a situation with so much trigger, so much pressure, so much like a CEO, right? And what happens? You default back to these scripts because they've been in there for much longer, right? Decades. And then all of a sudden you react again and then done, right? So in my Dubai story, yeah, this it's still unfolding this one actually. So in December, I was working with a team, a logistics team in Dubai. So I was going there for a day. It was a day on Monday. So I decided to make it a whole week. And I have this membership program with certain hotel chain, and I know that if I book a room, they always upgrade me. So I booked a standard room just from my home computer. I booked a standard room, and indeed, 24 hours later, I wake up in the morning, I see an email. You've been upgraded to a Marina View club access room, right? And for people who don't know what that is, club access is just a separate room, usually on the top floor of the hotel, sort of a lounge. And they have all day, they have food and they have nice piano music and they usually have a nice view over the city. So it's really nice because, it includes a lot of extras, right? And I was there to also write. So I decided, oh, that's really great. That's a nice upgrade. I'm really happy with that. So I didn't pay any attention to it, even though I had a feeling. But Let's talk about that later. So I go on plane, go to Dubai, go into an hotel, and there's this nice lady, really, really small lady. She was really nice. She welcomes me, and she says, I gave her my name and everything, passport. She checks me in, and she says, "Well, Richard, thank you for being a guest, and we would like to upgrade your room to a marina view room." And I say, "Thank you, that's great." I said, "With club access, right?" And she says, "No, this one doesn't come with club access." So I take out my phone with the app and I check, and it says Marina View Room with club access. It really says it there, right? With club access. So I say, like, look what it says in my app. It says with club access. And then she says, yeah, but that's just the name of the room, sir. And I'm like, that's just the name of the room. That's weird, right? That's just the name. I said, are you sure? Yeah, that's just the name of the room. This one doesn't have club access. I said, well, I said to her, I don't need free stuff, right? It's not that I'm here, but when it says with club access, that's not the name. It means that you get club access with the room, right? And she said, no, 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 no. And she just wanted to skip it, she just wanted to continue. She wanted to give me the key. And I said, well, can I speak to a manager? And she said, sure. So the manager comes over. He doesn't even look at me. And he just tells me, yes, sir. Well, that's something that we're in an argument with IT because they need to change the name of the room and they haven't been able to do that. And I'm standing there and I'm thinking, okay, consistent content creation, right? Um, they are a hotel. Their whole thing is accommodating their guests, making them feel at home, and based on trust and loyalty, right? They literally have loyalty programs. So I go, as guests, you go where you feel welcomed, where you feel treated well. And I'm thinking, they don't know what they're doing, right? Because they're now dealing with me, right? But another guest would flip out or get upset or write a nasty review on TripAdvisor or, right? Or gossip to. And I'm thinking, wow, they don't even see that they're trying to get rid of me with some excuses. So first it's the name of the room, and then it's an IT error. There's no ownership in that, right? Even if it is an IT error, that's not my mistake, right? They could have said, well, sir, we're sorry it's an IT mistake, but still we're going to give you, right? Because it's not,
Right.
you're not going to blame. But they weren't listening at all. Do you know when you're talking to people and there's no listening, right? You can sense that. So I decided to just get my key. I go up the room, I take out my laptop, and I look up the hotel manager on LinkedIn. That's what I do. And I send him a message. I said, look, again, I'm not here to get free stuff. I'm not in this for free stuff, right? If I want something, I can pay for it. But look, this is what's going on in your hotel. And I'm the guest who tells you so that you can decide to be better than this. Because most people will never come back, file a complaint, or, gossip about the hotel. And then your whole business model, if everybody would do that, you would have no more guests. 3 minutes later, he replies and he says, thank you so much. I had no idea this is going on. It's unacceptable. Can we meet for lunch? Sorry, breakfast tomorrow? And he wanted to apologize. And I said, sure. So we had breakfast together. And first 10 minutes, it was all nice and polite. And he offered me the club access and blah, blah, blah. And then he said that it's frustrating him because he has a lot of nationalities working in his um, uh, hotel. And he says it frustrates me because it really depends on who you get to speak to, what kind of service you get. And he says we've had trainings, we totally reinstalled, we re-engineered our processes, and nothing helps. It really just do what they want to do. If they like you, they do this. If they don't like you, they do that. And he said, I want a single process, not just depending on the person that checks you in. So we talk a bit more. We talk about the work that I do with our organization, so I am there. And then we say goodbye. And then later that day, I get a text message asking that guy again, asking me if we could meet for dinner the next day. And we meet for dinner, and he just asks me if I can train his hotel, and not just that hotel, but he's the manager of 5 hotels in Dubai. If I can train them all on basically, those hotels have those nice slogans, right? Your home away from home,
Mm.
right? It's a nice slogan, but if it's words, it means nothing. He says, "Can you help us be this? Can you help us be the slogan?" Like you said
Mhm.
at breakfast. I said, "Sure, we can try. It's not easy, but we can definitely give it our best effort." So I'm now training them to do that, to be their slogan. Yeah. And that's and the key here is not my stubbornness. It's really like, look, I'm standing for them being that slogan, right? You cannot say that we have the superior customer experience and then you do stuff like this. That this is just totally, that has no integrity at all. And I just decided to stand for that, even though if they couldn't see what they were doing. So the program we actually started, the program we're doing is so that they actually see what it means to say something and put it on a wall. Not as a nice thing that a marketing agency came up with, but something that you actually need to have in the DNA of the company. And that is it's not easy, Meredith, because you have to give some stuff up.
Right. Thinking about, though, where you were coming from in each moment of those interactions with the people at the front desk. And again, just like with the airline person, you didn't react. You you looked at creating in the moment, and when nothing happened there, you looked at what other things could I do? And so I like the idea that you reached out to the hotel manager, not from a position of complaining, but as you just said, taking a stand for what the slogan is supposed to mean in terms of how people are treated
Yeah,
and what it led to for you. I just think that's a powerful story on so many levels that we can reflect on and think about in our own lives, opportunities that we have to create instead of react.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And having just something now that you say that, I love people. You know, most people are that talk is cheap. They don't care what comes out of their mouth, right? You are one of the persons I know that when you say something, something happens, right? I know when you say, "Oh, Rich, I'm going to refer you to somebody, or I'm going to send you a title of a book," or whatever you say, you do, right? So with you, I know who you are and I know I can trust you. That's why I love, doing this with you and talking to you. But a lot of people literally are that their talk is cheap. So when they say something, it doesn't mean a lot, right? When they say, "I'm going to send you a link," most people that I know are not going to never going to send me the link. And what they don't see is that they're really undermining their power in the world because nobody trusts them anymore. And even worse, they don't trust themselves anymore because they have an internal dialogue. You know, these people that say, "Oh, I'm going to lose weight, or I'm going to stop smoking, or I'm going to whatever." And then already they know the excuses. Yeah, maybe not. And oh, it's too cold outside, or, the gym is too expensive. And for them, they have a very, I would say, disempowering conversation with themselves. And that's, to me, that is horrible. And if you read the book, that's what I had been going on. You know, when I was a consultant, I would do anything to be liked and be respected and to be admired. And I would even talk nonsense, stuff I didn't even believe in, as long as it would sell. You know, if I would score a big project for my consulting company, I would say anything. And then later on, I couldn't, back it up with actions. And that's really the most important thing, that what comes out of your mouth, when that means something and people trust that and they know that it's going to happen, you are powerful and people see you as powerful and you get opportunities that other people don't get. And that to me are those people are heroes, actually. You know, when you say what you do and you do what you say.
Yeah, that's one aspect of this book. It's so uh, rich. It has so many examples and so
Yeah.
many other distinctions that we don't have time to get into. I can't believe how the time has flown by in this conversation. Is there anything else that you are thinking of in this moment that you would like to share before we wrap up?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. There's a quote that I love by Marianne Williamson. It's in the book. It's called Our Greatest Fear. We are not afraid of our shadow. We're afraid of our greatness. And if we have the courage to really look at what are the stories I'm telling myself about myself and about the world and relationships and what I can have and what I can't have, if we really start seeing why they are there, it's because we are afraid, right? We are afraid to be big. We know we're big, and we don't want to jump out. We don't want to. It's even in the quote that you playing small doesn't serve anybody, right? I'm not saying be arrogant, be like, some people like, whoa, look at me. But really, when when I leave this world, and I don't know, a couple of people have been influenced by this book, and they have decided to dump all those stories and just really step into their greatness. And by them doing that, having other people go like, I want what they do. I want what they do. I want what they do. Again, not from an arrogance kind of standpoint, then I'm so happy I wrote the book because the book it's cost me 300 hours to write. I don't even know how much money I left on the table by not being able to work with clients in that time. And I don't need to sell a whole lot of books, but I would be, I'd be so grateful if people just really see what are the stories am I telling myself that keep so that I can play small, so I don't have to step into my greatness because we're all great, we're all magnificent. And if you had seen me 15 years ago, 20 years ago actually, um, you wouldn't have recognized me. Just so I don't think if I wouldn't have gone through this journey, I don't think I would have been alive. I would have just crashed somewhere at some
Hmm.
point. Yeah, honestly.
Well, a lot of the book is about your own journey, and that in itself, to me, is a revelation for the reader to think about their own journey and places where they have had these
Sure.
wake up moments, like you did there. And the different distinctions that you have in the rest of the book around the individual leadership role and the business role. Each one of those sections are very powerful. So I want to endorse your book and encourage my listeners to get a copy of it, Being Your Own Authority, uh, so that you can step into your own greatness. And Rich, I want to thank you for who you have evolved into today. I appreciate you, your voice, your courage, your stepping into your own greatness in a way that's humble and confident at the same time. And I am so appreciative that you are my friend and colleague. And thank you for joining me today. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning into my podcast. Now head over to growstrongleaders.com and check out the powerful tools we've created to help leaders strengthen their character and communication skills. Until next time, I'm Meredith Bell.